So, Cosmic Pilgrim, I wanted to thank you for your video. Very insightful, asked some good questions that I'll get to, but mostly I want to thank you for providing an outside third-person perspective of this debate or argument, more like an argument uh, than a conversation that Gary and I have been having. And it's so useful to get that outside perspective because Gary and I, just like you said, I'm taking the subjective position and Gary's taking the objective position, and no communication is taking place. We can't see or we can't accept each other's positions because um, my position leaves out the validity of what Gary is claiming, and Gary's position leaves out the validity of what I'm claiming. And we're at a stalemate, basically. And so, the more outsiders that we can get involved in this discussion that don't have an exactly identical position to Gary or I's position, then we can actually make some progress. And what is progress? Well, progress, I think, or at least, an admirable goal for us to have in this discussion would be to really make explicit a communal sense of morality, because that doesn't seem to exist at this point. Um, and we have to define what we mean by morality, which we haven't really done yet. I mean, basically, we all know it's how to decide between the good and the evil. Um, some people think that there's no such thing as good or evil. So not only are they not moral relativists, they're amoral. It doesn't mean they're immoral. It just means they're amoral. That morality is not something that the human mind can know in an objective way, and therefore it's not fruitful to even discuss, because all we can ever do is express our own individual inclinations. And when you asked about what we are to do when one person's heart contradicts another person's heart, I think we may be mistaking the heart um, as being synonymous with a subjective inclination. When I say the heart, I don't just mean um, feelings in the sense of something trivial. Um, I'm talking more about a level of our being where there couldn't be a conflict, because at this level, I do not recognize myself before I recognize another. And it's not because I run this intellectual model like Kant's categorical imperative, such that it only makes sense for me to hold myself to the same standards that I hold everybody else to. I just know on an emotional level that I am not separate from anybody else, and that I am the same before I am I individually, which is why I keep trying to stress the nature of uh, the dependence the intellect has uh, to the society that creates it. Human beings are intelligent because of culture, because of language, because we are children and have very malleable nervous systems for a long time, and we can learn a lot from the people that have already been here. And so we know what we know about how to speak and how to solve problems and be rational and do science because we were raised in a community. We consider ourselves individuals because of a history of social upheaval and evolution of the human mind and spirit. In the Middle Ages, people didn't consider themselves as free, not only in a political or physical sense, but in a mental sense, in the sense that you can decide something like what is moral. People didn't think that in 1500. what was moral was what God said is moral, or what the church said God said was moral, what the Bible said God said is moral. And there's no questioning that. But no, these days, there's thousands of books that have different articulations of what the good is. So it's very difficult to know what the good is intellectually. But, to get back to what we do when there's a conflict of the heart, there can't be a conflict of the heart, because at the level of the heart is like the soul. And at the level of the soul, we're all one. The intellect may be very differentiated and separational, or separated from the whole, but the heart is at the level of the whole. And this doesn't make sense, and maybe you have to have some kind of faith in the whole, faith in the soul, faith in the heart's ability to bring you to this level for it to be possible. You have to have faith, and it has nothing to do with your ability to reason out why it must be so that the heart allows you to feel this connection at the base of your being. You can't figure out why it should be so. You can only experience it as so and have faith that it is so. And I'm willing to admit that right out in the open, and I'm not going to hide that. So this isn't an objective moral theory. It's one which requires a certain, it requires something of the individual beyond just being convinced by good reasons for it to be true. It requires something more experiential than that. More experiential than some kind of equation or proposition which irrefutably proves that a certain formulation of a moral situation is correct. So when we say that we could ever disagree on the level of the heart, that one person's heart could desire or intuit that something different is the right thing to do than someone else's heart, we're really talking about someone's subjective inclination, not their heart. We're talking about what their ego desires when we're talking about something that where two people could disagree. And you mentioned Aristotle and how Greek philosophy generally saw purpose in nature, that there was something there that was inherently not only good, but inherently beautiful, inherently true. Whereas, nowadays, modern philosophy, Descartes, for example, he made all of that purpose that used to be out there in the world become something purely subjective, purely mental, purely the creation of the subject. And when you do that, that's when you run into all these moral confusions, because all of a sudden I can only know the world based on what I represent it as. And everybody has their own representations, and I can never know another person's representations. That's the reason that we have all of this moral confusion now, because whereas the purpose, the telos of the universe used to be located not only in here, but permeating both ourselves and the world. Now it's only up here, and some people think that because it's only up here, and because I'm just a material body, this subjectivism must just be an illusion, and I can only rely on the objective knowledge to guide my every waking moment if I want to be moral. But I think even Gary admits that it's almost impossible to do that, as you've realized as well. I don't know your name. I'll just call you Cosmic Pilgrim, which is a really cool username, by the way. Even Gary admits that it's virtually impossible to get over your reflexive self and your conditioned self, and this part of you that desires things, that has pleasures that must be fulfilled and hungers that must be satisfied. He's usually very clear in admitting that that's almost impossible to get over, and that this ideal of having this intellect that we're totally separate and in control of the rest is just that, an ideal, which I think you pointed out, and I agree, is we don't know how to do that. And my answer is instead of lamenting that, we should realize that there are other options. We can use knowledge to accomplish a lot of things. Knowledge in the sense of the intellect doubting what's already obvious so that we can gain control over a little bit more of the process. Never the whole thing, but just a little bit more. Instead of trying to gain control by doubting what's directly given in building technology and mathematics, we can instead just have faith in what's already there, what we already know on the level of the soul or on the heart, the level of the heart. And, I'm fully aware that this all sounds like bullshit, but that's part of the nature of the game.